Hey guys, my name is James and I'm going to be making a video that's a short tutorial into web design. A lot of people have been asking me to do a presentation on this and teach them how to design a web page. So I think that's the main reason why I'm going to be making this. And this will be the first in a series of videos about technology and computer science that I'll be making. So stay tuned. I'm just going to get started here as I don't want to waste too much time. Now, let's start with what web design is. It's basically website making. It's basically creating a what's known as a web page for your browser, like Chrome or Internet Explorer, to see. It's basically making things pretty for the user to look at on a website. A lot of people call it programming or coding, but in reality, it actually has nothing to do with that. What we programmers like to call programming has to do with what's known as making like applications, what's known as dynamic programming, which basically consists of doing things that are like if this happens then do that. It's very much like making an application on a web, for example, like making Chrome instead of making a website on Chrome. Whereas a website is very static. It's you load it once and it doesn't like it's not. Sure, there are things you can interact with a web page, but in general, when we talk about web design, we're not really talking about real programming here, and I want to make that clear. Web design allows us, though, to communicate with a really large audience very, very easily. In the modern world, I think there's no other better medium to convey your ideas in, and that's why web design is really important to learn. I'll be teaching a very basic coding side of it, which means like the actual nitty-gritty computer code that's necessary to run a web program, and I think it's necessary to learn some of that, the inner workings of how it works. I mean, you can always go to like WordPress and make your own website or Weebly, but I don't think anyone can create a really true self-sufficient website that contains all of the functions they want without learning at least a bit of code, and that's where I come in. Now, let's go over a couple of important concepts. Now, when you create a website, it's really similar to laying out a newspaper page because the same things apply. You need good content, what's on the page. You need information that people want to see. You want data or like pictures or whatever content you have has to be useful information. And that's really important because if a person goes to your website and sees nothing useful, they're not going to click on anything. And same with a web page. I mean, same with a newspaper, where no one's going to read your newspaper if you have all bad content that no one cares about. And that's why content's really important. Next, of course, you have design, or in web design, it's generally known as layout because design contains a lot of different things. How we lay out the page, how the information is organized. That's very important as well because how the user sees the information will affect how much they want to read the website. There's lots of different layouts. You can go to Reddit or Facebook or Google and you can see that there's a lot of different things. Generally though, if we look at these examples, you can see that they are kind of just like a list of stuff. And that actually works pretty well a lot of the time. So when we start to program things, we're going to start off by making lists of stuff. And soon enough, we can get into more complex things like this Facebook page, which is my Facebook page, so we're not going to leave it open that much, where there's different columns and different layouts and different sizes. We can get into that, and then you'll realize sometimes that less is more, and that's where Google comes in with the very, very simple interface, which if you type in something to Google, it actually just becomes a list of stuff again. So there's that trade-off between simplicity and attractiveness, and sometimes you can make something look really good even if it's just only a list of stuff. So layout is a little bit different, I would say, on the web than it is in a newspaper, because on the newspaper you want to look as eye-catching as possible, but sometimes when you make a very simple website, you want it to look simple rather than full of content and overwhelming. So let's get into the last part, the last concept that's necessary in order to make a website, and that's the computer part. That's the part where we need to learn how to actually code. We need to learn how to communicate with the computer of how to lay this stuff out. Unlike newspaper, there is no InDesign, there is no Photoshop. We can't just make things by dragging them in, although there are actual programs that actually do that for you, but it's like Dreamweaver. Adobe has one, but it's very hard to use and generally A normal person will just code it themselves, and that's where coding comes in. I just said coding. It's not actually coding. It's writing code, but it's not writing program. It's not programming. That last slide did look very scary. Yeah, if we look back at it, look at this. Look at this thing. It's like different colors and different symbols. No one knows what that means. It's kind of bad. But it's not actually that bad. Basically, what it was showing over here is what's known as HTML, which I'm positive that you probably have heard of before. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Now, that's something not a lot of people know. What this basically means is that it is the language with which the computers communicate with other computers. It's a language which organizes web pages for us, for the computer to understand. This information is transferred through what's known as the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is HTTP, which you've definitely heard of. In any URL at the beginning of your web browser, it says HTTP www. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is how they transfer hypertext markup language. So how a computer gives its websites to other people. That's known as Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Basically, people use Hypertext Transfer Protocol to move HTML, hypertext markup language, around. And that gets a little confusing, but just remember HTTP moves HTML and you'll be good. Now, HTML is basically a template, a set of instructions for the computer to display. It's very good at containing all of the information of a web page. Now, it doesn't do everything. It's part of some list of different programming languages that we need in order to make a real functioning website, but it's definitely the most important one because it's the one that plans everything. It's the blueprint, if you will. It's how we tell the computer how to make the web page. And we're sending, as we send it, as computers send HTML to each other computer, that's basically what the internet is. It's just a lot of computers sending a lot of HTML. So let's talk about HTML for a second because after we get past what design and content are, we have to really get into the nitty-gritty stuff. HTML uses a syntax, uses a grammar basically of tags. Tags are a way of writing HTML things. You'll see an example later of that. They kind of look like this with the lesser than sign and the greater than sign. Tags are just a very, very neat way to contain information, contain content on a page. Any layout and stuff would have to use tags in order to get things to look good. HTML keeps track of all the information. Now there's a couple of other languages that go together with HTML that goes into HTML in order to make it run. And those are CSS, PHP, JavaScript, and SQL. It's SQL, not SQL, unlike the other ones which are actually just acronyms. These all stand for different things that I'm not going to go into the detail of, mainly because it's something that we don't really have to talk about just yet. I'll definitely get into them in the future. But for right now, we're going to focus on HTML. I will go over what these do very quickly. CSS basically allows us to lay out a web page. It lets us show, organize information, make things different colors. It's basically the pretty one, the art one. Oopsies, I just moved back a slide. The artsy one, the one that controls the design of the web page. Yes, that's important. But in order to learn CSS, you need to learn HTML first because HTML is the main blueprint and the main content provider of the page. PHP produces what's known as dynamic content, which means that every time you visit a web page, if it looks different, then that means that you're generating new content every time, that the computer is generating content that's specific to a specific user. For example, if I type something into Google, that specific search will go through PHP in order to display things. What PHP does is that it communicates with another computer called a server computer, which then does all the processing and gives out information. If you didn't understand that, it's okay. I'll explain that in a later video. JavaScript is about animations, it's about making things move, it's about like pop-ups. It's the pretty things that are on the outside of a page that you need to use JavaScript in order to make things move. HTML is very, very static. Nothing moves in HTML, with a couple of exceptions, of course. There's always exceptions to the rule. And finally, SQL is server language, which is basically what we use to talk with a server computer. Now, I keep saying the word server. What a server is basically a computer that our computers talk to. Our computers, which are known as client computers, will need to talk to a server computer in order to get the HTML back. And SQL is very useful for maintaining databases and talking to different amounts of information. Like another computer somewhere is holding all of the information that we need. We use SQL to give that computer instructions. If you didn't understand that, it's okay. It's not really important to know what these are yet, but just know that HTML isn't the end-all be-all, and learning HTML means that you'll probably have to learn at least a couple of these other languages in order to make a functional web page. And hopefully we'll get a chance to learn all of them, and then by that time we'll have a very good idea of how to create our own web page. Yeah, that's enough of me talking though, so let's just go to an example so that I can explain the main syntaxes and the main cool things about HTML. So here I have open a special editor here. It's known as Notepad++, and it is a window that, it is a notepad that lets us edit HTML and makes things free. You can just use normal Notepad to edit HTML, but it's a little bit better to use this because it provides a couple of tools that are very useful for later uses. So, the beginning, I talked about how HTML uses tags. What I mean by this is these symbols right here, tags. So basically, tags here, ooh, that's confusing, I don't want to use arrows. Tags are basically the grammar of HTML files. What that basically means is that we use different words that are inside HTML tags in order to organize information. And the best way to show you is to actually give you an example. So the first thing we write whenever we start an HTML file is the word HTML. And guess what? We write it inside a tag. Notice it just turned blue. That means the computer recognizes it as a syntax keyword, as in it's a word that HTML recognizes, that a computer will recognize. When I write HTML, that means that the computer knows we're starting an HTML file. Now, tags are a lot like parentheses in HTML in that you have to open a tag and then close a tag. Whenever you open a new tag, you need to close it in order to tell information of where this tag begins and where it ends. In this case, the HTML tag shows when the HTML begins and where the HTML ends. So let's say my entire HTML is 17 lines, then I will put HTML here to end it. Let's make it 16 lines so it fits on the page. As you can see, there's a little slash here. I put a little forward slash. To a computer, that means end. So slash means end. Basically, slash HTML would mean end HTML. Exactly. So every time we make a tag, we have to make a closing tag. This is what a closing tag is, this bottom one right here. Closing tags are necessary in order to be the closing parentheses. So we're telling the computer that an HTML file starts here and it ends here. Now there's a lot of syntax that we have to memorize in order to write an HTML file, but there's really only 5 or 6 main tags that you really have to know in order to start writing code, although there are definitely a lot more once you get into it. I'm going to start with the 2 main ones that are underneath HTML. So first you tell the computer, here's an HTML file, and I'm going to be putting information inside. The first tag you're going to need is known as the head. Any HTML file will have a head. Oopsies. Closing the tag. I'm going to delete these to make it a little easier to see. If I need more space, I'll just press enter. Basically, then computers will read this head as where we put the metadata of the web page. What do I mean by metadata? It's basically information about the web page. Now, this is different from information on the web page. Information about the web page, so the name of the web page, the different, as I mentioned before in the other slides, oopsies, here you go. As I was saying before, there was CSS, PHP, and JavaScript and SQL. Well, if you are going to go to here, if you're going to be putting any information about JavaScript, if you're going to be putting any information in PHP or SQL, a lot of that information has to be specified in the head first. So first of all, the one piece of information that we always want to have is the title of a web page. Now, what is the title? It basically is when you go on Internet Explorer, you can see how the top bar has a name for the website. Like if you go to Facebook, it says Facebook at the top. So basically here is where we write the title of the web page. And that's just the thing on top of the window that it reads. On your Google Chrome tab, what that actually says. That's what the title is. And since that doesn't actually go on the web page, and it's just an information about the web page, that goes inside the head. Any HTML file has to have a head in order for it to be a proper HTML. And there's a lot of information in here that you can put in. You can even put information about the website here that any other programmer, any other person that's making the website can read it, and you would put it inside comments, which I'll explain at a later time. The second part of it is known as the body of an HTML file. Crazy, right? And these are the two main parts of an HTML file. When you write HTML, basically you're always going to write HTML head, lots of information, close the head, open the body, lots and lots of information, and then close the body and then close the HTML. Hardly ever will you have other things here that are outside of the body of the website. The body is basically what's on the website. So what information we put on the website. Basically, whatever I write in here will appear on the website. So if I write, for example, hello world, when I go and open this HTML file, when I go and show it in a website, hello world, the words hello world will literally show up. Now there's different things you can put in a body. You can put, for example, you can put images, and that's img for image. And notice I closed the image tab like this. That's how you would make an image. Now, when you create an image, there's this special syntax where you can put information about the tag inside of the tag. Now, so far I've had the name of the tag inside it. A lot of the times, a tag can contain a name and then more information inside of the tag here. Here's where you put basically adjectives to describe the tag. For example, say I wanted an image. Now, images are basically, we need to give it a file, right? Because images are files, JPG files. So what we write is src, which stands for source, =, and then quotation marks to represent the file name. So picture.jpg. Now I don't have a picture called picture.jpg, so this is kind of a moot point here. But if I had an image called picture.jpg, then it will go into the file and find picture.jpg in order to open it. Let's see if I have an image here that we can use. Later I will show you what that means. So let's see, do I have a picture? Here is a picture. It's called Seuss.jpg. I have an inspiring quotation by Dr. Seuss, so I'm going to write the word Seuss here. Now I know you can't see this in action right now, so I'm going to actually show you what the page looks like before I continue doing things. Give me a second. Yep. So now I'm going to show you exactly what this page looks like. If you go over here to the web page here, I've loaded example.html, and if I refresh the page, oops, I didn't saving the document, you're going to see that it says, what's on the website? And that's exactly what it says over here. If we go over back to our notepad, what's on the website is right here. So if I delete this, and then we go back here, and we refresh the page, it'll just say hello world. As you can see, Seuss.jpg doesn't seem to be loading right now. Let me see if I save this in a different folder. Oh, that's why. Let's put this in documents. Okay, now if we refresh. Oh, this is saved in Notepad++, that's why. Basically, when an image in HTML is saved, it's actually saved in the same, it has to be saved in the same folder as the HTML file, or it has to be, you have to specify exactly, like with C, blah, 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 blah. And I'm actually going to find a picture on Google, and hopefully that worked very well. Ooh, what just happened? Oopsies. Sorry guys if you saw a bunch of mice, I don't know why that's going on. Let's go over here. And that fixes itself, I'm sorry about that. That was really weird, but that's okay. Now if I open a new tab and go to google.com and say I want the Google logo here, I'm going to copy paste this image URL. What I did was basically get the URL of the page, and then I go back to my notepad over here. And let's say I put the exact URL of the image right here. Let's hope this works, where we save it. And now if I go back here and go back to example, as you can see, it loads Google. You can see the big giant Google here. So that's how you put an image into a web page. Let's get back to our code for a second, though. All right. So as you can see, that's how we put an image. And it's inside of the body text because body is exactly, again, where you put the content of the page. Now let's say that I didn't want hello world to appear here and then a big picture to appear here and nothing in between. Let's say I wanted a break in the line. What we write is the word break. BR stands for break. It creates a line break. Makes sense, right? So when we go back to the page, I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like here. If we refresh, now notice that Hello World is on top of Google. Now, if I go back to my notepad and say I wanted a lot of line breaks because I want more space between, and I put it over here and save it, and then I refresh the page, and we're going to see that Google goes all the way down. And isn't that cool? So basically, as long as we have a lot of information, as long as we know how we write this code, we'll get exactly what the computer wants us to do. So this is a lot of BRs. I'm going to delete all of them. Now let's say Hello World's too small for our liking. If we look at the pre-web page, that's a really small Hello World. Let's make it really big. Now here's another thing that we can type in. Say we wanted a different font size. What we can type is font size equals. And what this is saying is that let's create a font whose size is a certain amount, and then let's put these words in that font. Notice I'm using an open tag here, the font tag, and closing the font tag. Now let's say I want the size to be 100. I don't know what's going to happen here because if I write 100 point, will it recognize? Let's find out. See, a lot of this is experimentation too. Now if I refresh, now notice I've deleted all the breaks, so all the breaks go away, and notice the font's in a 100-point font. 1,000-point font? Let's try 1,000. If you notice here, I just changed it to 1,000. Then refresh. Oh yeah, that doesn't work because no one's that, like, if there's a certain high amount, then it might not run properly. Let's see what happens. Maybe if I do... There we go. Okay. Now, basically, what this means is that we can create a lot of different things using our code, as you can see here. I'm going to delete the font one now. Another thing we can do is make this what's known as a header. A header, use the H tag. And what we write is header followed by a number. Header 1 is the biggest header. Basically, 1 is largest, 2 is smaller, 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 all the way up to 5. H1 makes the text extra big. And if we do that and save it and we go back to Chrome and refresh, notice that it's bold now and it's all the way up here. Now headers automatically make a line break because whenever you want a header, you're going to be wanting a line break anyway. So that's why this is in bold and there's a line break. So that's a lot of really cool things that you can, little things that you can do with it. With HTML, that's basically a very small example of so many other different things that we can do. I'm going to show one other thing, which is known as the link, before I end, and this is going to be the most complicated one because it has a lot of symbols that don't really make that much sense. But before I continue, I'm going to review all these tags that we've gone over today. HTML, it tells us that it begins a document, an HTML document. Notice it's ending all the way over here. You can't see it. Oops. Oh well. Basically, HTML is where we start it. Let me just move everything so we can see everything. There we go. HTML, where we end it. It's always at the beginning, it's always at the end. Next, the head. The head shows the information inside of a data file, and therefore that's basically all the information about the web page, as I said before. Title, it shows the title of the web page. I don't know if you guys saw when we went back here, but if you look closely at the Chrome window, up here it says the title of the web page. Can I zoom in? Is it possible? Let's find out. The title of the web page right here. It's really hard to see here, so that's why I zoomed it all the way in. Let me just put it back now. And there we go. Anyways, so as you can see, the title shows the title of the web page. Next, body. That's what contains all of the information of the web page. I wrote hello world. Heading, it gives us the H1, which means the first heading, the highest, the biggest heading is the largest heading, and it lets us format this text differently. It bolds the text and it puts it on a line break, as we can see here. Finally, image, which basically lets us make an image. IMG is the abbreviation for image. Source, SRC, it tells us the source of an image, and then the source can be any web URL here, as you can see, HTTPS, or it can be any file inside of the folder of the source. I'm going to quickly go to the folder and put in a special picture so that you can see. Do I have a picture here? And we're going to put in a picture of the lion's roar because that's the only photo I can put. Continue. Alright. Now I put a file called lion.jpg in here. You didn't see it because it's off screen, but that's okay. So if I write lion, what type of file is it? Lion is a JPG. So if I write lion.jpg and save it, if we go back here, let's hope this works. There we go, a lion comes up. So this is saved in the same folder and it will also work. If you want a different folder, you'll have to write it in a different way. In our other example, we had the Google logo, which comes directly from HTTPS. S stands for secure, but HTTP, as we said before, transfers information. And it's transferring in image in this case. That's really cool, right? Another thing that we talked about was font. Font allows us to change the font of a web page. It lets us change the size. It also lets us change the font style of the web page. I'm not sure if style is actually the correct word there. Doesn't matter. Color. So for example, if we want it to be red, let's see if this works. See, it's very small here, but it says red. So you can make the color red or blue or something the same way using font. Now, generally, this is actually frowned upon because anything that changes the color or the style of a web page really should be using CSS to be programmed. I haven't talked about CSS very long. Remember in the PowerPoint presentation I was talking about CSS. Well, you're supposed to be using CSS for it, but in a pinch you could always use font. So finally, the end of the body and then the end of the HTML, as I said before. Now let's go over the final super interesting one known as the link. As we said before, if you click on if anybody has known what a link is, if you click on a link, it goes to a website. In HTML, when you write a link, you write a tag starting with the letter A. A stands for anchor. Basically, it's the start of a link is the best way to think about it. Almost always, you're just going to be writing A. And then you're going to have to write what's known as the hyperlink reference. That's a really complicated way to say, where do you want this link to go? So you're going to write href, which stands for hyperlink reference, and you're going to choose a place. For example, I'm going to let this go to google.com. This will just go straight to, one second. It's always good to close your tags. Remember to always close them, okay? Now, this will create a link that will go to Google. As you can see, I click here to go to Google right here. And also, by the way, new line breaks in HTML doesn't mean anything. We could have written this in a whole different way, and as long as it's not in between quotation marks, as long as we don't do like this, which actually I think this might actually even work. As long as not like that, then anything else can be in a different line break and nothing will happen. Click here to go to Google. Now if we save this, ahref equals this. Click here to go to Google and say this, and we go back here and we refresh it. You can see how a link just formed over here. One sec, I'm going to make a break. Oh yeah, break. We never explained break again. Break creates a line break and use the PR tag to do so. Now if I save that and it refreshes, it goes down here, and if I click on the link, it goes to Google. Isn't that cool? So we can make a lot of different things here. A lot of things are very intuitive in code, and I haven't explained nearly any of the large number of different tags that HTML contains, but this is a basic gist of what HTML is. Basically, we have tags that open and close, inside of them information. And as you can see, this body tag opens all the way over here and contains all the other tags. So tags go inside of tags, just like parentheses go inside of parentheses. For example, say I wanted to click here to go to Google to be in red. I'm not sure if this will work actually because our browser's the imaging might be a little bit buggy. But if we put the font color equals red tag, I'm copy pasting right now, inside of the ahref, inside of the link, as you can see, we put, see how A is on the outside and font is on the inside of it? It's easier to see if I move these over. Here. As you can see, A is on the outside, font is on the inside. Now if we save, hopefully this will work. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. As you can see, it turns red. Isn't that cool? So basically, as you can see, you can put nest parentheses, nest tags inside of each other, and that's how we get HTML to work. Now that was pretty overwhelming that I just showed you a lot of different types of code, but basically just remember these very simple ideas that HTML, head, body, and then everything else inside is just learning the little code, little tags that go inside. Open tag, close tag, nested tags. BR again is break. There's a lot of other tags that are like do different things, like button is a tag, div is a tag, which lets us create a division. That's another useful thing to create. Later we're going to learn other ones like, what are some other good ones that are important? iframe, which lets us create a frame inside of a tag. A frame is basically another web page inside of a web page, so web pageception, and it's really cool, and I'll show you that at a later time. There's so many different things. Ooh, you can see a bug here. I just forgot a tag here. Well, oh no, oh no. Okay, there. And as you can see, there's thousands of different tags in HTML. That's not true at all. There's like dozens of different tags in HTML, and every single tag does something different. So it's always important to learn a lot of them. But in those things you can always look up. What you should always understand, however, is the idea of opening and closing tags, writing information inside of the tags. Now I'm going to go back one more time to the web page that we've created. And as you can see, if I click to go to Google, it still goes to Google. Google's one still looks much more impressive. So that's just the basic gist of websites and how websites work. How HTML is written. And we're going to go over a lot more details about more complicated things, much more in-depth stuff in a later video, but that's just a general gist of HTML and web design basics. Thank you guys for watching.